Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We're here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host. And for this episode, I am here with Sarah Santacroce. And Sarah, thank you first so much for being here, taking the time to spend your morning there in Switzerland, early morning, to be able to be here talking with us. And I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to everyone that is listening.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Brian. This is like one of the highlights of my week. I told my kids I'm gonna have a podcast with New Zealand. Can you imagine? So yeah, really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as you said, Switzerland, it's my home, born and raised in Switzerland. That's where I grew up. Where should I start? I think I usually start when I actually left Switzerland for the first time. I went to school here. And then when people kind of started to, make choices whether they wanted to go to university or not, I decided university is not for me. It's too confining. It felt like constrictive, and I didn't feel like that's my place. And so instead, I left for a year to Paris and went over there to, kind of deepen my French. And I really enjoyed that year. I was 18, so obviously a great time to be in Paris. And then when I came back, I grew up in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. And when I came back from Paris, I'm like, actually, it feels much better to be in the French-speaking part of Switzerland now that I speak French, and felt like a vacation to me. Switzerland has 4 different languages, and it's really like each part of Switzerland is its own mini culture. And so the French-speaking part is much more kind of like the South, more Mediterranean, where the German-speaking part is kind of more German and kind of precise and stuff. So I moved to the French-speaking part and have been here ever since, except for the second time when I left Switzerland, and that was in the year 2006, when my husband and I and our 2 kids, we moved to California for 4 years. He had a job transfer, and so we decided, let's move. Actually, he came home and he said, I have 2 choices, either Minneapolis, so winter, cold, or California. And I'm like, well, let's go to California. So yeah, that's also kind of when I started my business over there, and yeah, the rest is history. Now I'm back in Switzerland, and as you know, we kind of can't travel right now, and I really miss it, because part of, you mentioned my last name, and we kind of, discussed how to pronounce that before we went online. And it's Italian. So my husband is originally from Sicily, but grew up in Canada. And so we have these Italian roots. And when we came back from California, we were really missing the sun and the palm trees and just a kind of more relaxed way of living. And so we started looking into buying something in Sicily, which we then did. And so now we have a place in Sicily. And that's when I go there, then I turn into Italian Sarah. And it's just like a different Sarah, like a different way of living down there. So I miss that right now.
Beautiful. And for those that are listening that don't know yet about what is it that you do, and one of the main topics that I wanted to talk in this conversation. Can you share a little bit on how you got into the work that you're doing now, and what does it entail?
Yeah. So what I left out in the story is that I had a very, I think, different kind of upbringing. I grew up in a hippie commune. And so my parents and 5 friends bought an apartment building together. And so we each had our own apartment, but we spent a lot of time with the other families. And I feel like I have one, blood sister, but I feel like I have, all these other siblings from these different families. And so that's how I grew up. And they co-owned that building. And so there was a lot of things that were decided together. And I remember these meetings where they would have all these discussions, and not everybody would always agree. And so there's this idea of having different opinions and being fair and gentle and kind, and yet being very firm in their opinions. That's how I grew up, surrounded by that. I very much ditched that whole thing, though, as when I moved out. You know how teenagers sometimes are. They're like, I want nothing to do with my family. They're all just bizarre and weird. Like, that's how it felt to me back then. I'm like, oh my God, my dad is going to come pick me up with his bike when everybody else is getting picked up in their car. And so I really left everything behind and then went into business, as I mentioned, in California, where I then started a LinkedIn consulting business. And the irony just, hits me right now that I went into the most kind of professional and stiff kind of platform, being, at the origin, this hippie child in a way. So I did that for 10 years. So I ran a LinkedIn consulting business. Obviously still work with some clients on LinkedIn because that's a skill I built. But over time, I just felt like I'm so different from everyone out there, especially when it comes to marketing. Like I grew up in this online marketing world, having started the business in 2006 when all the social media started. And, all these marketing techniques on how you grow your list and scale your business and run a webinar that gets you $1 million in 2 weeks, all these techniques, that's what I was surrounded with. And so eventually, I guess it led to this breakdown that then started a breakthrough. So that's how I got into this idea of we need more gentleness, we need more kindness, because deep down, I always wanted to be kind. And so that's why these marketing techniques often didn't feel kind to me. And I always tried to adapt them. And yet I felt like such a fraud to actually use some of these techniques. And over, I heard from clients, I hate marketing. And so I really wanted to dig deeper. Why is that? Why do people hate marketing so much? And it really is because we're doing marketing things that are not aligned with our values. We're being told to do things a certain way, and then we're doing it because the gurus said so, but it just doesn't feel right. So yeah, that's kind of the other thing is the anxiety. I really started to pay attention to the anxiety, the global level of anxiety in general. But also then when I looked at marketing, I'm like, why is it that marketing is contributing to this anxiety?
Yeah.
Couldn't there be a better way? Couldn't we, it's kind of like the B Corps, do business for good. Couldn't there be a way that we do market our products or services, but without always increasing this anxiety in ourselves because we don't feel good, and in our clients because we use these manipulative techniques, shaming and all of that.
It's so interesting because there's two things that when before this conversation, like some of the things on why I wanted to have this conversation with you, partly is because I am on that side where I think that most of the marketing techniques that I see out there don't resonate with me at all. I've worked in the past in marketing. I didn't like what I was doing because of that. And back in 2008, so this is actually quite a while back, I did my postgrad in neuroscience. And this was back in Argentina. It was the first time that neuroscience was being taught as a postgrad in Argentina. And it was me, my older brother, we went to study that together. And the rest of the people that were there, I think there were 12 more students. They were all sent from the big corporations like Procter and Gamble and Unilever and all of that type of companies. They were sent there to learn how they can use the new understandings from neuroscience to sell more and to manipulate more.
Wow.
And I thought, this is so interesting. There's me here trying to just learn and understand, and then there's these people that went there to actively try to see how else can they manipulate. And for me, this is, as you say, one of the biggest things that we have in this modern society. That is an issue. That is that we know how people work and how people react and how people behave, and therefore it's easier to manipulate that.
Yeah.
But for me, for example, when I'm working, when I'm running conscious action, when I'm doing business, I almost never use any of the techniques that I'm being told that this is the way that it works, just because I cannot do it. Like, it doesn't feel good at all, and I prefer to have one client instead of 50, if that means that I'm doing what it feels good for me.
Yeah.
And
what I would say to that, oh, sorry.
no, I was just going to say, like,
Go ahead.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's fascinating because yeah, obviously that's what a lot of marketers say. They're like, yeah, but this works because we know it works because it's based on human psychology. And what I would say to that is, I think it works as long as there is value in what you're offering, and as long as you're not just doing it in order to sell more, and the main objective is basically to sell, then it doesn't feel good, right? If the objective is to really offer value, then yes, okay, to a certain extent, you want to obviously not completely ditch everything that works. I don't think that's what we're trying to say here. Like, let's take the example of these three pillars that we often see in pricing techniques, where you have a cheap price, a middle price, and a really high price. So what happens there is that they know that the middle price is usually the one that sells most, right? And so they're manipulating the prices of, for example, they put a really, really high price that nobody is ever going to buy on the right-hand side for the really high priced offer. And then they, just put a bunch of crap into the lower end offer, so that, in the middle end offer. And by crap, I mean like a bunch of ebooks and like things that it's almost like overwhelming, an overwhelming amount of content. And just so that it looks like more and that they are able to sell more. So that, to me, that's not offering value, right? And so that is tricking the human mind into buying your middle offer and not really thinking, am I really offering value?
And in your journey of working with this and what you call the gentle business and marketing revolution, What are your learnings, and what are the things that you can share with our listeners that perhaps are in the same boat, that they are, entrepreneurs and they are starting their own businesses, but they feel conflicted around using some of these techniques?
Yeah, I think it all starts with awareness and really, just hearing this. It's funny because we all kind of know this. I mean, that's what I hear a lot when I talk about this. I'm like, oh yeah, yes, that's what I've been thinking all along. And so kind of having someone say that on a podcast or read a book about it, that just kind of gives you permission to say, yeah, I'm going to really pay attention to this and no longer, kind of deal with things that make me feel less than, or that make me feel anxious or manipulated. So start with the awareness and look at your inbox, and if there's anything that you're receiving where you just like don't feel good, maybe give the person the benefit of the doubt, because I think there's a lot of us who are just doing the things that we're told to do without being actually aware how it makes other people feel. So meaning if you actually have been following this person for a long time and you feel like deep down, this is a good person, I want to, keep engaging with them, maybe give them the benefit of the doubt and maybe actually, reply to the email and kindly say, that really didn't make me feel good. Just, see what comes back. But if on the other hand, this is a person who has continually used those methods and you can feel it. You go to a website and you can just feel it. You're like, no, thanks. No longer engaging with that kind of content. And so as you're becoming more aware, you will also become more aware of your marketing and what works for you and what doesn't work anymore. And it's the little things, it's little things, it's words, it's how you frame things. It's yeah, just look at your language, the way you use it. It's so nuanced, the way we've been taught to market and sell. And a lot of times it's shaming techniques. So making the other person feel like they have this giant problem that they can never solve unless they buy your program or your product. It's a lot of shaming and manipulating. And I think once you start to pay attention to that, you can slowly shift to a more gentle approach of marketing.
Yes, and that is, there's two things from what you were just sharing that really resonate with me. One is that sometimes it is like, as a consumer of things, it is also easy in a sense to actually, as you were saying, like just reply and give feedback to people, because a lot of people, and I know this based on a lot of people that I know, the same people that are trying to tell me what to do have been telling other people what to do, and some of them are doing it, and I know that they are nice people, I know that they mean well, yet I unsubscribe from their newsletters because I don't like that. And is this as easy as you say, like that? I say the same when with a completely different thing, but with companies with consuming goods, like if I'm buying a t-shirt or things like that, is like sending to the businesses that I don't believe that are doing the right thing, just sending them an email, communicating, because perhaps they haven't thought about that. And the other thing that I think that it's interesting is going with what resonates, going with this is the approach that I want to give, this is how I'm going to add value, because at the end of the day, like, this is what we are trying to do, and marketing and a lot of the tools are just a way of getting people to engage and to actually see that I exist and this is what I'm trying to provide. And just how does it resonate to do it, and what is the best way to do it for me. And that way is not going to be the same for each person. For each person, it's going to be different.
Right.
How can we get to the point where more people are aware of the techniques that are being used, therefore we're not as easily manipulated? Or do you think that it's even possible?
You know, your podcast is called Conscious Action, and that's really, I think, what it's all about. It's this idea I talk about in the book about the conscious client. And you just mentioned this idea of, I no longer want to buy clothes from a company that I don't, trust, or that I know that they're doing shady production, etc. So I think it will be a thing that happens over time, but not necessarily over a lot of time, because things are moving really fast towards a more conscious world. And I think this movement is going to come from the customers, from the conscious client, not from the companies. And so I start with entrepreneurs because that's where I've spent the last decade. I do eventually think that conscious companies should be interested in gentle marketing and should pay attention to what the conscious client really wants, because this movement is going to continue, and that's what's going to lead the move to a more gentle approach to marketing.
And I'm curious, are there, and of course I'm asking you to put it in a very short amount of words, what is a movement and what is something that you wrote a book about and that you're doing for work, but what makes gentle marketing different?
I think it's really to bring more empathy and kindness to your marketing. So if I had to give you just one sentence, that would be it. And that really comes from this idea of understanding your conscious client holistically, and not just focusing on the one thing that you're trying to sell them. In marketing, we're told that we really need to focus in on that problem, right? The problem that they have, and kind of blow up that problem so that you can then say, but I have the solution. So it's a shift from that and coming really to marketing with a holistic approach to it. And yes, clearly still stating the problem, because that's how the client then realizes that we have actually maybe experienced a problem, or we know this problem. So it's not about not talking about the problem, but talking about the problem with more empathy, and not making the person feel bad that they have this problem. So when you think about service providers, too often that's what we see, and that's what we've been taught on these sales copy pages, that it's on and on and on about this problem that you have, that you don't have clients, or that you don't have enough money, and instead of spending so much time on that, just go into more of the solution, and really bring that with empathy and kindness. And I think it's a shift from kind of negative marketing to positive marketing. And we've been trained to think that that doesn't work as well. And I'm just not sure that I agree with that. I am okay with thinking that it's slower, and that is okay.
Yes, that's
a shift, for people to agree. Okay, we can do marketing in a slower approach.
Yeah, and what you just mentioned, it's really interesting, because there is I remember I was talking with someone that works in marketing, and they were telling me, you're not telling anyone what's their problem. Like, you're just talking about like well-being and consciousness and being relaxed, and and they're like, no, you need to start talking with the sense of that scarcity, what was not there, and getting also the pressure of the buy now, because then this is going to be gone. And I'm like, no, like I'm not, there's like, I mean, yes, if I'm running an event or if I'm running a webinar or a workshop, there's a certain time that of course people need to subscribe or buy, but I'm not from day one saying like there's only 5 spots left and you need to buy now or the price will double or stuff like that, and all of those techniques that I've been told that works, and I know that they work because people actually like get triggered and then they buy. Yet from what you're saying, I think that it's really interesting, and this is, I think that is my natural approach, is I prefer that slowness. I prefer to go a little bit slower pace, but not trying to push people's buttons in that way, and not going into the scarcity. I'm being more about abundance. I'm being more about I'm here and I'm of service instead of trying to get people to come to me.
So glad you brought that up about the scarcity and abundance, because it's another one of those human psychology tricks, right? It's like, make people feel like there's not enough, or there's it's gonna end, or anything like that. And the other thing is, I think people who build a business based on scarcity, they cannot expect to have a sustainable business, because people who come in with scarcity, they're not going to be in a state where they get results like the people who come in a state of abundance. And so they're scared already, right? They're feeling like I'm not good enough, and so I better hope this $2,000 program solves my problems. And so they're in this constricted energy, and a lot of times it just doesn't work for those kind of clients. And yet what we see on the sales page is the number one person for whom it actually worked, right? But the reason that doesn't create a sustainable business is because unhappy clients don't refer to others. And so you're not really, you continue to have to hustle to get more of these scarcity clients, because it just doesn't create that bubble effect where eventually people just refer you, and it just grows organically. So it's kind of this vicious circle that you keep feeling like I have to push more and more and more.
Yes, and it's I find it interesting because this I've been living with that referral or that word of mouth for my business and for making a living, and it's really interesting because a lot of people are like, oh no, like you should go and promote this and get all of these clients, and I'm like, I'm good with this. Like these people like are seeing actually the results. They are coming to me, they are referring me. Like if someone is referring me, that means that what I'm doing actually is of help, and I can actually see that, and I'm privileged enough to be able to actually make a living just by doing what I love doing, and by supporting people. And I think that this is something that, as you say, like yes, it might be slower than if I would be selling all of these big ticket webinars and millions of people, and it's like, I don't yet have that much clients and that much money, but I'm perfectly comfortable with where I am. And not everyone needs to be, like, I don't know, just to name someone like Tony Robbins or something like that, like a big name that is doing these huge things. Not everybody is meant to do that. And he is there and he's meant to do that. And like, it's interesting because even with people like that I know that they mean well, they are using a lot of these tactics because they work.
Yeah. It brings up also the subject of what is enough. I really think it's important for us to reflect on this question, what is enough for us? Because that's another thing that we're being kind of sold to as the definition of success. Instead of each coming up with our own definition of success. We're being sold one, like you said, Tony Robbins or, you know, some other guru out there. We're like, that's who you should become. And so I'm going to sell you all these marketing strategies that make you into that person. I mean, I'm so allergic now to the 6 or 7 figure kind of headlines, right? They're everywhere. And so it's like you are made to feel like a loser if you're not at 6 or 7 figures.
Mm-hmm.
But who says that's your definition of success? Who says you need that much?
Yeah.
You know, yes, that's kind of an average that they came up with, but maybe you're perfectly fine. Maybe your rent is way cheaper and you don't actually need that much. And you have a way happier life than some of these people who are constantly pushing themselves to go bigger and bigger. So I'm not saying big is bad. It depends on your definition of success.
Yeah.
And if that's part of it, then you just need to find a better way to get to big. But if big is not in your definitions of success, then you know, just focus on who's already there instead of always chasing after the bigger and the better.
Yes, and as well, you know, I'm glad that you mentioned that 6 and 7 figures as well, because there's, and this is also used for marketing purposes. The people that are selling that, a lot of times they are not there, but they get there by getting people to buy that from them. And it's a really interesting dynamic, because it's, I've had this a lot of times, and it's something that I've been working on myself through the past 5 or so years. That is, it's one of my few trigger points that I have. That is, the people that are in this space that is more around well-being, that are selling something that they are not yet. They, like, I know a lot of people that have done, you know, like a 1-month course on something, and then suddenly they go out and they start to promote themselves in a way that it is kind of misleading, just because they don't have enough experience. They do know the knowledge, but it hasn't turned into experience and wisdom. And I know, like, this is a completely personal like thing, just because I've been doing this for 17 years, and sometimes I find it that all of those people that are like doing all of these marketing things are getting a lot more clients, just because they are using the tactics that I'm not willing to use, and they are misleading people in terms of their own experience and understanding. And it's a really interesting dynamic, because it's the same with the 6 and 7 figure thing. It's just getting that into there, and it's like getting people to see that that's the important thing. And I got someone that over a year ago asked me why I wasn't successful, and I'm like, what do you mean? And they were like, well, you don't have enough money. And I'm like, I'm successful. I live where I want, how I want, doing what I want. I'm able to, you know, live the life that I want. Yes, I don't have millions, but I'm doing everything that I want. That, as you were saying, that's my definition of success.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm perfectly okay with where I am.
Yeah. I really think that we need to allow people to define their own success. And in the book, I kind of poke at the American dream. Having lived there, I really think this American dream is kind of sold to everyone in the States. And to me, it's almost like it's in the Constitution. That's what I'm poking at. And since we're all online, and you know, this is a global world now, it feels like the American dream has become a kind of a global thing that we should all aspire to, and it's used in so many marketing techniques and just how people present themselves, right? And you're absolutely right. They know, their definition of success is not the same as yours, and often I think if you dig deeper, they haven't actually looked at their definition of success. They're chasing someone else's dream. And then I think what COVID really did for us is have us pause, and maybe, hopefully some people actually thought, well, what is actually important to me? Because success means you're doing what's important to you, what's essential to you. And so, like you said, it's about living where you want to live, working with the kind of people that you want to live. And believe me, I know, because I've been in the wrong place. I did work with the wrong kind of people, and that does not feel like success. Yes, the bank account looks like you're successful, but deep down you don't feel like it, or you're just not happy. So I think it's really time to think about this idea of success. And of course, now we're talking about us as marketers, right? But if we as marketers pose ourselves that question, that will lead to that change that you were mentioning. Well, when is that going to change? Well, I think that's what's leading to the change. If we are rethinking, and I have so much hope for your generation, the millennials. Well, I can just see it everywhere. It's not the same as it was, for the Gen Xers, where it was always about more and scaling and bigger. It's not that anymore. And so I think it will happen unquestionably.
Yeah, and you were just mentioning your book, and I was just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about your book and what can people expect from your book, and as well if you have any other resource that you think that would be beneficial for anyone listening.
Yeah. So the book is really I call it a blend between personal development and kind of really pragmatic marketing advice, or not even advice, marketing knowledge. And I say that because I structured the book around the journey into the labyrinth and back out to the world. And that's an image that's often used in personal development. So you walk into the labyrinth, and I used the three words that start with the letter R. And the first one is rumble. So rumble with your story, really find out who you are, what your values are, what your definition of success is, what's enough for you, all of these questions that we often, in marketing, I've never had a marketing program that had me reflect on this, but it's so key if you want to build a business that makes you happy and that attracts or resonates with the right client. So I start with yourself and rumbling with who you are. And then you're in the middle of the labyrinth, and there the letter is rise. And rising meaning, well, rising towards yourself, first of all. So really giving yourself permission to be yourself. Also rising in terms of being different, allowing and giving yourself permission to be different. And that's how you rise above, the others. And rising also together, like with other partnerships and collaborations, and working with other people that have similar values. And then the final step, when you walk back into the world with all this knowledge that you now have, is about resonating with your ideal clients. Because when you bring more of you into your marketing, more of your worldview, that's when the right kind of clients resonate with you, because you just see the world the same way, and it's not like you have to sell to them so much anymore. It's like they resonate at a deeper level that goes beyond just what you're selling. And so that's when the beautiful conversations happen, and at the end they're like, so how can we work together? So yeah, rumble, rise, and resonate. That's kind of how the book is built. And I really wanted to bring in quite a lot of my own personal stories. So it's it's being released on February 17th, and it's kind of weird to think, oh gosh, all these personal things are going to be out there in the world, but I came full circle, so I feel okay with it.
Wow, wonderful. And I'm pretty sure that I was thinking of the date that you mentioned, that by the time that people are listening to this, the book will be out.
That's great. Yeah. So they will know. And just another resources, two more things. So if people want to just kind of get a feel for who I am, there's a free marketing, one-page marketing plan on my website. That's at sarahsantacroce.com/one page, the number one and then page. And that takes you through the 7 P's of gentle marketing. I can quickly hold up the mandala that I kind of reorganized in the shape of a mandala, because the mandala is a creative process that leads us to our center. So I feel like if we're marketing from within, then there's going to be a different feel to marketing. And as you see, it starts with passion, personal power, people. So we're starting with ourselves here too, and then go into product, pricing, and promotion and partnership. So this email series kind of takes you through these 7 P's and just makes you reflect upon the different parts of your marketing, really. And then I'd like to also mention another book by a colleague that is called Conscious Marketing, Carolyn Tate. I think she's Australian, and I just think it's a good fit for your audience as well. So look that up, Conscious Marketing.
Wonderful. That's so good, and I'm looking forward to also seeing a little bit more from your book once it comes out. And Sarah, what is your one go-to tip when you need to share about this topic with someone and they're like, okay, only one thing, what's that one?
I think it's the awareness, really starting with yourself and seeing what feels good and what doesn't. And if it's not feeling good, either unsubscribe or give the person the benefit of the doubt and reply and tell them how it made you feel. But not in a bad way where you don't want to, shame the person either, because if it's a really, a good person, then most likely, as we discussed, they've just applied these techniques because they learned them from somewhere else. And so that you can really hurt them if you are doing it in the wrong way.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, being gentle as well on how we are communicating that. Wonderful.
Exactly.
On a personal level, what has been your latest small act of kindness?
Just yesterday, I messaged a past client who I know is single, and so I was just like, let's connect, because I know how hard it must be right now for people who are, in lockdown and single. So I wanted to connect with her.
Yes, wonderful. It's such an interesting time, and I know so many people that live by themselves, and it's challenging. I mean, it's challenging for everyone, but being isolated, it's not easy. So that's such a wonderful thing. And what is the one thing that you wish that everyone in the world knew?
I've been working more often with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And I really feel like if more people knew about them and used them in their marketing, even in their business, we would get to where we want to get faster. And there's beautiful resources on the UN's website, and I think they're just a great way to figure out our worldview as well and what matters to us. Because we all think, climate change, of course that matters. But if you look at the 17 different goals, you will find out that there's some that matter to you more than others. And I think that's where really beautiful content gets created, when you start, bringing more of that into your marketing and writing about these goals or causes that really matter to you. Because we can't you possibly write about everything in those goals, but you can make 2 or 3 your priority and then talk about those more often.
Yes, wonderful. I really like, I've used a lot in a lot of my workshops, the sustainable goals, and as well, I've used sometimes, and I think that for some people also this sometimes resonates a little bit more, is the donut. The donut economic or the donut system, that I think that it's quite related. It's just a slightly different approach. I think that both of them are really good to be able to get people to think a little bit different and to create some of the changes that we've been talking about. And lastly, Sarah, how can people find you? How can people connect with you?
Yeah, they can come to my website, sarahsantacroce.com, or like I said, the one-page marketing plan is at sarahsantacroce.com/one page. I'm still most often on LinkedIn, so look me up there and send a connection request and mention that that you heard us here. What else? The book is on Amazon or thegentlemarketingrevolution.com/book.
Wonderful. And I'm going to put all of that as well on the episode's notes so that everybody has quick and easy access to that. And for everyone that has been listening to this episode, I would love to know what you heard that resonated with you. What are the things, especially around this topic, that I think that it's so important for a lot of people and a lot of our listeners. They are actually on this boat, that some of these marketing techniques don't resonate. I would love for everyone that is listening to comment on that. What's your experience like, and what have you learned from this conversation? Thank you so much, Sarah, for taking the time to be here, for the work that you're doing. And I'm actually going to go and check the one page and just go through with it for me, and see also what comes up, because I keep on refining and refining and refining.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. This has been absolutely delightful. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.